first of all, I got some restaurants that, they just did not do so well. The health inspector showed up. First of all, we have another Subway. We were talking about those guys last week. Subway Fresh. This is the Subway of Waxhaw on Providence Road. They had a 90. But some problems. The person in charge had no food safety training.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, that's an alert.
Yes.
The paper towel dispenser was not working, and the manager said, the batteries are dead. Well, okay, so he finally...
I have a solution.
Replaced the batteries.
Let me borrow $6. I can fix this for you.
That's exactly right. Observe the soap dispenser on the floor of the men's room. You got your soap? Yeah, it's on the floor. It's in that puddle of urine over there. So while the inspector was there, he put it back on the wall. Oh my goodness! Well, we sort of poked fun at their veggies Subway. Tomato in the box was moldy. I guess they would observe that the tomato had to be discarded. And speaking of slicing, their tomato slicer and vegetable slicer had dirty food residue on it, though it supposedly was clean.
Yeah, you'd expect that, I guess, from the other. The soap is on the floor, Mark.
Observe meatballs that were prepared the day before, and they were still at the wrong temperature. Wow. That was a repeat violation. Oh, my goodness. Observed a number of items. Pepperoni, salami, sliced provolone, and American cheese also at the wrong temperature. It was too warm. So Subway not eating too fresh at the one in Waxhaw at 90.
No, thanks.
Now, we've had these guys on before, too. This is the Dunkin' Donuts Baskin Robbins.
Okay.
Out on the Lancaster Highway, 87 and a half.
Ouch.
That's terrible. The person in charge did not have any food safety training, but said she is taking a course online.
Okay.
Well, that's good.
Improvement is good.
Observe pitchers that were stored in the hand sink, so that was blocking the hand sink. There were no paper towels at all. The facility is out of paper towels, so maybe they just...
That's what your jeans are for.
That's right, dry on your shirt. Observe plastic containers and a knife that were dirty, but they were stored as clean. There was slime in the ice machine. They had egg, sausage, light cream, regular milk, and oat milk that was too warm. And they had a problem with putting dates on stuff. Observe open packages of sausage, cream cheese, chicken, ham, and fat-free milk with no date at all.
Come on.
And not a single employee was wearing a hair restraint.
Oh, wow.
Get a little hairy donut.
Wow.
Yeah.
It doubles as floss.
So that's the Dunkin' Donuts Baskin Robbins on the Lancaster Highway, 87.5. And we got one here back for a second appearance on the big show. This is
regular.
Yeah, do you remember 9 Spices Indian Cuisine?
Oh, yes.
Archery Kell Road. Well, last month they had an 80. And this month they have an 87.
Okay. Hey. Baby steps, I guess.
Yeah. Observed an employee handling the trash can. Remove gloves and then just go put on some new gloves without bothering to wash.
Come on.
An employee had his bottled beverage sitting in the bulk ice. Ooh. So they said, okay, remove the bottle and dump out all the ice, please, as it should not go into a customer's drink. Observed open container of frozen raw shrimp sitting in a pan of cooked chicken. What? Why would you do that?
Well, I don't understand how this even happened.
I don't either. That was a repeat violation.
Just put it there.
Yeah. They had the large spice grinder was dirty. It had food residue and splatter.
That's not a good word.
Splatter.
No.
Numerous flies. Well, maybe these flies were drawn by the splatter. Numerous flies observed throughout the back of the house, especially in the dish area. Observe the fly light. You know, a light you have to zap flies. It was on top of dry bulk storage food containers.
Wow.
The inspector said, do not put fly lights on food.
No. Also, that seems like it could be a fire hazard. I don't know much about that, but...
That's just nasty. So there you go. 9 Spices Indian Cuisine, Archery Kell Road. A little improvement, but still 87.5. No, I'm not going.
The flies are free, though.
Well, that's true.
Now, looking at those 3 restaurants, I mean, there's just some catastrophically bad things going on in some of those, right? So we have, again, no manager with full training. One of the managers there was taking an online course, but then when you hear about the plethora of problems, if you're doing the course currently and you've still got issues like the hand sinks with no paper towels, we heard about the other one where the soap dispenser was on the floor. I mean, it's like, this is just horrendous stuff, right? Time and temperature abuse just consistently happening. When you do this, when you allow things to be sitting out in the temperature danger zone for any period of time, then you're just asking for trouble. It's just a matter of time before you poison someone, and then it's all over. Then it's all coming down onto you, especially as the food safety manager. It really is coming down to you. Dirty equipment, constantly a problem. Slime in the ice machine just tells that health inspector that things are not being regularly cleaned, because it takes a long time for slime to build up in an ice machine. It's cold inside the ice machine. Date marking issues. And these are things that should just be automatic. You wrap something up, you put something in a container, you write the date on it. Right? It shouldn't be something that's an alien thing to people that they don't think about. It should be an automatic habit before it goes in the fridge. Hair restraints, cross-contamination issues. I mean, just some awful things with, raw shrimp with cooked chicken? It's like, wow. I mean, so you're talking about cross-contamination and cross-contact issues, right? So cross-contamination issues with bacteria from raw and cooked together, but then cross-contact. Cross-contact is what we say when we're looking at allergies, right? And shrimp, being shellfish, they are one of the big 8 that we know of that cause anaphylactic problems with people who have allergies, and it could kill them. So someone asks for a chicken sandwich, and as far as they're aware, it's just chicken, but really it's contaminated with shrimp. You could literally kill someone in literally just a few minutes. I mean, it's really not good at all. And then the fly light issues, that was just gross. But yeah, so all these things together, you guys can be responsible for helping some of these places to not be doing what they're doing, because this is just catastrophic stuff. Okay, now we're going to be moving on to our final chapter here, chapter number 10. So this is cleaning and sanitizing. So important things when it comes down to cleaners, the way that we actually wash different products, they need to be stable. They need to be non-corrosive, meaning they don't burn through your hands and things like that and damage the actual equipment that you're washing. They need to be safe to be able to use and available. Right? We hear about different problems in different restaurants where, why is it that people aren't washing their hands? Why aren't people sanitizing things? Oh, because there wasn't any sanitizer, there wasn't any hand soap. As a manager, we have to make sure it's always available, no matter what. Okay, is it okay to use machine dishwashing detergent to clean other food contact surfaces? Right? No. So every chemical has its specific purpose, and it does that job really well, but it's not designed to do other things. It could be dangerous for other things. It may end up contaminating other things as well, or being dangerous to the person who's using it. Sanitizers are regulated by the state and federal EPAs. They must be available to staff during all hours of operation. Again, if you don't have the sanitizer, you're not going to use the sanitizer. So if it's locked away in a cupboard, or if you just don't have any on site, you're not going to sanitize anything. Right? That's one of the things the health inspectors just look for when they first walk in. They're going to want to see the storage for your sanitizing and detergent and other chemicals, to see that they're being stored correctly and to make sure you've got some. Okay, so let's take a look at this now. So these are, we've got 3 different sanitizers that we're going to look at. We actually use what we call a quartz sanitizer. We'll look at that in a second. But these are other different ones that are available too. You can use chlorine, also known as bleach. So this is where you want to have the water temperature between 75 and 100 degrees. You want to have the pH of that water being between 8 and 10 on the pH scale. The water hardness as per the manufacturer's recommendations. And then sanitizer's concentration rate. So to actually measure that sanitizer rate, you can get little test strips that you literally dip into the solution, and it turns to a different color, a different shade of different color, depending on whether it's actually hitting the right kind of concentration or not. And that's one of the most important things, is to make sure that sanitizer is correctly done. If you have too strong of any of the sanitizers, then you could end up leaving that residue on the plates, on the pots and pans and different equipment pieces, and you could end up creating a chemical contamination issue with your food. If you don't have enough, you're not killing anything. Basically, you're just rinsing things off. And as you see, the sanitizer contact time, 7 seconds. And so that's why, again, we don't rinse these things off. We make sure that it stays on there so that as it dries, it kills off the mold, bacteria, and viruses. So then we have iodine or iodine. Is that how you say it in this country? Iodine? Yes. We call it iodine in England. And then we have quartz sanitizer. So we have 68 and 75 degrees for these ones here. So that's warm. It's not freezing cold. It's not boiling hot. It's warm. Again, so with the water pH, generally you just go by the manufacturer's recommendations with these. Water hardness, again, you're going with the recommendations. The concentration range, again, you have to make sure you follow the actual directions on the side of the bottle, but then you can test with test strips to make sure it's maintaining that strength. Sanitizer contact time, 30 seconds. Again, that's why we let it dry on there so it has that full contact time. How do we clean and sanitize? So you guys know this because we do it every day in the kitchen, right? So most important thing, we start off, we scrape off any residual mess that's on there, any of the bits into the trash can. Then we wash the surface with a detergent. So that detergent breaks down any grease and grime that's on there, and it starts that process of cleaning the particulate matter from there. Then we rinse that surface we have potable water, right? Clean water. Then we sanitize that surface, just going over it with a nice thin layer of sanitizer, and then we allow that surface to dry. Having that contact time is critical. Make sure that you let it dry. Don't ever be tempted to then wipe it off. Let it dry on there. It's designed to do that. Okay.
How to clean and sanitize a surface. To clean and sanitize a surface, start with scraping or removing food bits from the surface. Next, wash the surface with an approved cleaning solution and towel. Then, rinse the surface using clean water and a towel. Now, sanitize the surface using the correct sanitizing solution. Make sure the entire surface has come into contact with the sanitizing solution. Finally, allow the surface to air dry. How to clean and sanitize a surface.
Okay, must the cutting board be cleaned and sanitized between preparing raw asparagus and lettuce? What do you guys think? Yep, they're different things. They could have different problems going on with them. It's only a few years ago that we had, or a couple of years ago, that we had a romaine lettuce scare where there was a ton, like tons of it, literally across the country, that had E. coli that was infecting into it. So what if you are preparing some romaine lettuce that you think is kind of innocuous, that's not going to hurt anyone, and then you go and prepare some asparagus right afterwards, and you end up contaminating the asparagus with E. coli because it was in the lettuce. So yes, when you do different jobs, then you need to wash, rinse, and sanitize that cutting board. Cleaning and sanitizing stationary equipment. So you have to unplug the equipment, take the removable parts off the equipment, wash, rinse, and sanitize them by hand, or run them through the dishwasher if that's allowed and if it's possible, depending on the size of them. And then scrape and remove food from the equipment surfaces and wash the equipment surfaces. Rinse the equipment surfaces with clean water. Sanitize the equipment surfaces. Make sure that the sanitizer comes in contact with each surface. Allow all surfaces to air dry. then put the unit back together. Okay, this is one that I had that came up in the test not too long ago. Counter-mounted equipment, which is not easily movable, must be elevated on legs to provide clearance for cleaning between the equipment and the table. How much clearance must be provided? So if you look underneath the actual cutter, because you have to be able to clean underneath there. If you have, so we have a relatively small meat slicer, and so that meat slicer doesn't have a very wide area. So when you reach your hand across underneath one side to wipe everything down underneath there, you can get your hand under there without having a massive clearance. When you have a very large machine like this one that's hard to move around because it's heavy, there has to be a bigger clearance. As you can see under there, there is a bigger clearance so that you can get your hand down underneath there. So as a standard, 4 inches of clearance meaning the space between that tabletop and the bottom of that slicing machine or whatever that particular large piece of hard to move equipment is, 4 inches is the standard. However, it does then give some other, whoops, let me move this out. It does then actually give some alternatives, because a slicer like our smaller one, where it has a smaller footprint, that spacing does actually go down. But as a standard gauge, 4 inches is what's required for hard to move equipment that's countertop mounted. Okay. There's things like that aren't necessarily always brought up, but I have to see it in one of the previous exams. Okay, so when you clean in-place equipment, the equipment holding and dispensing TCS foods must be cleaned and sanitized every day unless otherwise indicated by the manufacturer. Check local regulatory requirements. So that's just saying that a piece of equipment, if you use that meat slicer once a month, then you can't rely on the fact that even though you cleaned it and sanitized it a month ago, that it's now clean and sanitized a month later when you're going to use it. You will need to clean it and sanitize it again in order to be able to use it, because a long period of time has now elapsed between uses. Silverware contains dried on food. What's the best thing that we can do before washing it? So you're saying, you said scrape, you said soak. It's kind of a trick. It's actually, it can be all of those. Okay, so yes, we can do all of those. But the point is that we can pre-treat it in some sort of way, whether you're soaking it, scraping it, we can pre-treat it before it just goes into the dishwasher and comes out, with still food stuck in between the tines of the forks and things like that. And that's generally what most restaurants will do. They'll have buckets set up with a pre-soak or something like that, or they'll have some kind of a process that they go through to make sure that they get as much out of there as they possibly can beforehand. And that's important, because otherwise silverware tends not to come out as clean as you would want it to be. Okay, operations using high-temperature dishwashing machines must provide the staff with an easy and quick way to measure surface temperatures of items being sanitized. An irreversible record of the highest temperature reached during the sanitizing rinse. So you can see on the picture right here, that's what that is. That's a thermometer that you literally put onto the slot, and you ride it straight through the dishwasher itself. It will read up to the highest temperature that it hits, which is generally during the sanitizing phase of the, it's like the last thing that goes through on that dishwashing cycle. And whatever it hits as the highest, it stays there. Because normally a thermometer, if we just ran a sugar thermometer through, then already by the time you open that door, it's dropping degrees, like rapidly, right? Because that's what happens. With evaporation going on, the temperature just drops rapidly. So we want to be able to make sure that we register that maximum temperature and where it holds there, so that we know, did it ever reach the temperature we need it to sanitize the things that are going through there.
To clean and sanitize equipment in a 3-compartment sink, start by scraping, rinsing, or soaking any large pieces of debris off of the soiled piece of equipment. Then, wash items in the first sink with a brush, cloth towel, or nylon scrub pad to loosen dirt. Be sure to change the water and detergent when the suds are gone or the water is dirty. Next, rinse items in the second sink by dipping them in water, or for larger items, spray them with water. Make sure to remove all traces of food and detergent from the items being rinsed. If you're dipping the items, change the rinse water when it becomes dirty or full of suds. Once rinsed, sanitize the items in the third sink. And remember to change the sanitizing solution when the temperature of the water or the sanitizer concentration falls below requirements. Never rinse items after sanitizing them. The final step is to air dry the items on a clean and sanitized surface. Place the items upside down so they will drain.
So it's all fairly simple stuff. It's stuff that we're constantly doing, right? Every day that we're in the kitchen. So it's very similar to when we're cleaning a table in the kitchen too, right? We get rid of the debris. We scrape, we soak, and we wipe off that the debris from that food. We put it through into the detergent to clean it, to get rid of the grease and grime. Then we rinse it off. We put it in the sanitizer. We then let it air dry to let that sanitizer have that contact time. Really important to have that contact time to kill off everything that's on there. And there's a big reason to have that rinse in between. We don't want to mix the detergent and the sanitizer together. It's not going to necessarily create any noxious fumes or anything like that for us, but it will nullify themselves. They don't mix together. They actually knock each other out. They mitigate the capabilities that they have, which is not good because we want our detergent to clean. We want our sanitizer to sanitize. So it's important that we don't mix the two together to get a good rinse in between. So cleaning and sanitizing each sink and draining board. Fill the first sink with detergent and water at least 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Our water normally comes out about 130. Sorry, about 130. That's why I always recommend wearing gloves with it because it's hot. It's hot. But when you're putting a cold pan or a cold pot into there, it starts leaching a lot of temperature out of there fairly quickly. Fill the second sink with clean water, right? We always use potable water, clean water, to be able to use for washing anything. The third sink is filled with water and the sanitizer to the correct concentration. Provide a clock with a second hand to let food handlers know when the items have been in the sanitizer long enough. Is it okay to rinse items after sanitizing them? Yes or no? No, right? We want that contact time. Let them air dry. We don't ever just take them out and then rinse them off to put away. The sanitizer must stay on there until it's dried. Have these cups been stored correctly? So, no. So the glasses and cups should be stored upside down on a clean and sanitized shelf or rack to not allow things to fall into them, right? Has this silverware been stored correctly? So it has handles facing upwards. So yes, because the flatware and utensils should be stored with the handles up so that when staff go to pick them up to set the tables, they're not grabbing the parts that you're going to be actually placing into your mouth as you're eating the food. So this can be a little tricky. And if you're a food service manager, you're probably going to have staff coming to you saying it doesn't work properly. Because the other thing is, so if you put forks with their tines down, then very often as the sprayers on the jets inside the dishwasher are going, they don't necessarily clean everything out quite so well, especially if you're packing a ton of forks in there. So what I would recommend, if you're in that situation, you have staff saying, it just doesn't clean them properly. You have two options. So the first one, put less forks in there so it allows more room for those water jets to blast the dirt and debris off. Secondly, you can put them through to wash them with the tines up to get them properly clean. Then what the staff will need to do is then take them and put them heads down, tines down, and run them through again so that they've already been cleaned, but now they're sanitized going back through, so you're now not going to touch the tines. But it's important. We never touch we don't touch the portion of a plate that you're eating from, right? When we're carrying a plate, you're holding the rim and you're holding the underside. When you're holding glassware, if it's a stemware, then you're holding it by the stem, or if it's just a regular water glass or something, you grab it by the base of the glass to actually place down. We're not touching anywhere near the area where someone is placing their lips. Same with silverware. That area on the knife, the fork, the spoon that you're consuming food with, we never touch that. And you always make sure that your hands are sanitary before you start placing silverware down on tables or rolling silverware rolls into napkins or anything like that. Make sure that you keep everything sanitary while you're doing it. And you have to make sure that your staff would do that same thing as well to keep everything sanitary. Okay, is this a safe practice? Wiping the plate before it's being sent out from the kitchen. So actually, this one's okay. This one's kind of hard to tell, is the thing. So it is safe to use a dry wiping cloth to wipe food spills from tableware, as long as the cloth is visibly dirty or uses or does not contain food debris. Sorry, it's not dirty and doesn't contain food debris. Yeah. As long as you're using a clean cloth, basically, then it's okay to wipe it. Right. No, you shouldn't. Right. You shouldn't just be using just some kind of a rag or something like that to wipe it down. You have to use a clean cloth to do it. Cleaning up after people who get sick, always a wonderful experience, right? But it's really important that you abide by this, because if someone has been sick, it could be something that's contagious. But either way, even if it's not, it could just be that they've overconsumed something, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, it's been inside that person. So any bacteria, molds, viruses, anything that's going on with that person is now out all over some area of your restaurant. It needs to be cleaned up well. So diarrhea and vomit in the operation must be cleaned up correctly. It can carry norovirus, which is highly contagious and really nasty to get. Correct cleanup can prevent food from becoming contaminated and keep others from getting sick. To be effective, operations must have a written procedure for cleaning up vomit and diarrhea, address the specific actions employees must take to minimize contamination and exposure to food, surfaces, and people, and train employees on these procedures as well. Is this a safe practice? We've got one of the pot wash sinks and they're cleaning the mop in there. What could possibly go wrong? Right, so no. We have a mop sink that's actually right inside the closet over here. That's where we clean the mops, because a mop has been used to clean the floor. So when we're washing, rinsing, and sanitizing equipment, that's going to come in contact with food. So we don't want to combine those two things together. So we keep them completely separate. Is this a safe practice? We've got the mop being stored on the shelf right here next to the bread. What's the problem? Right? We've got cross-contamination problems. They're definitely here. So mops should be placed in a position to air dry without soiling walls, equipment, or supplies. Definitely not food, right? So when I have them in here, they actually will dry by air drying over that mop sink area, so it doesn't drip anywhere. It doesn't make a mess. Like, if you're mopping things, you're looking to clean up messes, not create messes. But then that way it's dry, so in between uses, it stays sanitary. Chemical use. Never keep chemicals that are not required to operate or maintain the establishment. Why would you? But some people make big mistakes. Things like bug spray, things like that we hear about on our dirty restaurant episodes. These are all chemicals. All of these are chemicals. We shouldn't be treating insect infestations ourselves. We should have professionals doing it. And if you try and figure it out, then you're probably going to do it wrong and you may end up poisoning people. So always cover or remove items that could become contaminated before using chemicals. Make sure to clean and sanitize equipment and utensils after using chemicals. And always follow the law and the manufacturer's directions when using the chemicals. And very often those are part and parcel. If you read instructions then it will say it's against federal law to use this incorrectly. Right? And it's important. The reason why they have these in place is to make sure that you're not tempted to do something silly that you shouldn't do. Right? These chemicals are made for specific purposes. Use it for that specific purpose. It generally says right on the front exactly what it's for. Storing chemicals. Keep them stored separately from food, equipment, utensils, and linens by spacing chemicals apart from other items or by partitioning off chemicals from other items stored in the same area. So for us, we have an ideal situation where we have a separate closet where we store the majority of our chemicals. And then for the chemicals that we're using every day, they are over above our pot wash sink, so that they are on the opposite side of the kitchen to all of our other food storage facilities, and they're completely far away from any food preparation areas. Always make sure that happens, okay? Never allow chemicals to become a problem for you. Chemicals should be the solution to problems. Storing chemicals, chemicals stored in their original containers must have the manufacturer's labels on them. So if you have a large container or something that takes a while to go through it and that label starts getting ripped off, tape it back on. Keep the original label on that original container. You may need to refer to it. If there's an accident or something like that, then the paramedics, if it's that bad, may need to actually read that label so they know exactly what chemical's in it to treat the person who's been injured by that chemical, okay? Because it must include the directions for use and it must be clear enough to be able to read. Working containers must be labeled with the common name of the chemical. So as you can see, the sanitizer photograph up here. So that's not necessarily in the original container. That's been placed into a spray container. Make sure that spray container has must have the common name of the chemical, right? So if it's a sanitizer, you don't necessarily need to write down that it's a quat sanitizer or that it's a bleach solution or something. You can write just sanitizer on there, but so people know that it's not just water or that it's not just not window spray or something like that, so they don't mix it up with the wrong kind of chemical and use it incorrectly. So when creating a cleaning program, we should list all of the cleaning jobs in one area or in the order that they're performed. Include the food and non-food surfaces on there as well. Sometimes we can forget about the walls and possibly ceilings if you're spraying, if you've sprayed food up on the ceilings, but certainly on the air vents, things like that. I actually have a program where we go through and we vacuum to actually clean off all of the air vents and things, because you start getting debris start building up on those. List cleaning tools and chemicals by name. Post the cleaning instructions near each item and follow the manufacturer's instructions when cleaning the equipment. Make it as easy as possible. Okay, when you're a manager out in that world and out in those situations, the easier you make it, the more likely it is it's going to be done correctly. If you make it where it's difficult, where someone looks at that task as, oh, I'm going to do that one on Friday because I just don't want to do it today, because it always takes me like half an hour to get everything ready before I can even start. And then we get customers come in and I have to stop what I'm doing halfway through. Make it simple. Make it easy. Have written instructions on exactly what they should do, and it will get done. Make sure that people are accountable to doing it, so that way someone will be asked, did you do this? Right? Because if it's everyone's job, it's no one's job, right? Because no one takes care of it. When monitoring a cleaning program, supervise daily cleaning routines. Check cleaning tasks against the master schedule daily. Change the master cleaning schedule based on changes in menu, procedures, and equipment. And then ask staff during meetings for input into the program. So if you have responsibility for the floors, you have responsibility for the fixed pieces of equipment, you have responsibility for the slicers, and so you have that responsibility. It's always up to you to make sure that that's done. Then if we have instructions in there that make it where it's impossible for you to get that done effectively in the time constraints you're given, then it's unreasonable. Then the chances are that person may rush and not do a good job, or it might be that they just don't do it at all, that they give it a quick wipe over and hopefully you won't notice that it's filthy. Because if they know that they can't ever win, then they won't do it. They won't do it properly. Make sure that it's all achievable. Get their input. If they say, hey, listen, cleaning this food slicer, it literally, to do it safely, it takes an hour to do. And let me show you if you don't believe me. You have to take all this apart, you have to clean off the dirt, you have to then wash it, rinse it, sanitize it, and then have to let it dry, then I have to put it back together. I can't do that in less than an hour. If you get that input and then you make changes, so it's like, okay, then let's make this change so it is possible to do it, then that employee is more likely to say, okay, they listen to me, they do understand, then I'm going to do it properly. But if you just say, well, it's too bad, you got to get it done in half an hour, then they'll find a way to do it in half an hour and it won't be done properly.